Joining us now, co-founder of the Black Voters Matter Fund, LaTosha Brown. LaTosha, thank you so much for getting up early to be with us to talk about this important legislation. And, I actually want to start with what we heard from President Biden yesterday, because it was a pretty passionate speech. It seemed to get some positive reviews. He cast this fight really as one of democracy versus autocracy. What was your reaction to the speech, and what else do you think the president needs to be doing on this issue?
And I think a couple of things. The first thing is I do think that it was a good speech. He made some great points. I think connecting the history of voter suppression, going down historically, going through that, really acknowledging that we have a threat at hand, that democracy is under attack, and the points that he raised related to that. What was disappointing, what I did not hear, is he did in his 20-minute speech, he never talked about the filibuster. And so those of us who know that the filibuster has been used as a tool historically to stop, it has a long history of stopping civil rights legislation. And so whether that means, as Representative Clyburn has suggested, or many others, if that means ending the filibuster completely, or even just carving it out, as Representative Clyburn suggested, we have to have some kind of action to get voting right legislation through, particularly on the federal level. That what is happening in Texas has also happened in Georgia, and also happening all across this country, this nation right now. Democratic rights are under attack, and I mean as citizens. This is not a partisan issue. We cannot allow the Republicans to make this be a partisan issue. All citizens in this nation should have free and fair access to the ballot. We literally need to be making sure that we're protecting the right to vote, not even marginalizing it. And so that's what is happening right now.
Right. So, LaTosha, I mean, we've talked a lot about Joe Manchin and why there's not 50 votes in the Senate to eliminate the filibuster or to make this carve-out change that Congressman Clyburn is suggesting. But I know you've been in meetings at the White House on this issue with other activists and civil rights leaders. And I'm just wondering, how does the president explain his unwillingness to call for changes to the filibuster? Because if President Biden, who, of course, longtime member of the Senate, if he were to say that he supports those changes, it may make a difference. I mean, what does he say when pressed about why he's not willing to come out and say, hey, the filibuster needs to change?
So many of my colleagues have been in there. I have not been invited to the White House. I've had conversation, and many of the civil rights leaders that I respect and admire have actually been in those conversations. And what it appears, so I can't speak on behalf of what happens at that meeting. What I can speak about, though, is what we're hearing publicly. Publicly, the president has said that he supports the filibuster. Publicly, I mean, until yesterday, I was not hearing the kind of language that I felt like needed to be heard from his bully pulpit, acknowledging the urgency of the moment now around these democratic voting rights. I think that we have to really recognize that this country has actually gone to war, around in the name of protecting democracy. Here we have domestically, the democracy is under attack. We actually measure the strength of a democracy by who has access, making sure that people have free and fair access. And here we are right now looking at legislation that, quite frankly, is targeted to be punitive to people who participated in the election process. And so what I think we need to hear President Biden say that he's willing to do everything in his power, including ending the filibuster if necessary, to make sure that we get voting rights in this nation.
And what do you think has been what do you think the impact has been of the Texas Democrats coming up here? On the one hand, they've come under some criticism for leaving the state, but on the other hand, they've also gotten meetings with top officials and put a huge spotlight on this issue.
I think when you have an extraordinary times, you have to have an extraordinary response to it. What is happening in Texas right now? Texas is the #1 state in terms of, it's already the hardest state in the nation to be able to vote. And so they know what is happening in this moment. They also know that is the attacks that they're experiencing in Texas is not just limited to Texas. It is a national issue right now. And so I think it's courageous for the actions that they're doing. I think it's very courageous. I think that they take their oath seriously around their going to protect and defend the Constitution and democratic rights in this nation. And so it also speaks to how desperate they are, because we have to have federal legislation. That is what they're calling for. I think that even activists and organizers on the ground have also been saying the same thing. There's no way around it. We have to have federal legislation to actually make sure that we're protecting voting rights in this nation.
right, the co-founder of the Black Voters Matter Fund, LaTosha Brown. Thank you very much for being with us this morning. We really appreciate your time. And earlier